What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Central Florida Sportscast. I am your host today, Danny, and with me I have my esteemed colleagues, Adam and Eduardo. What's going on, guys?
Yo.
Hey, how's it going?
I am doing great. I have Miles here licking my hand. So I'm doing great. It's been a long time, Miles.
This is
back
us
in your company.
We're finally getting our first guest. That's right, Miles Turner here in the studio, licking Danny's hand.
Well, I had some chips earlier, so he wanted the salt off of the fingers.
He just built a bunch of Legos, and now he's ready to lick some hands.
How's it going, Miles? All right. Well, he's not ready to talk yet. Well, he's just got to warm up a little bit. We'll come back to you. Well, we are reaching here at the end of the year, and a little bit of a quiet time here in the sports world. Orlando City season over, UCF football season's over, but things are still ongoing, obviously, in the news department. Plus, we have a lot of basketball to talk about. So we're going to jump into it, and then we have a special surprise at the very end. But first, UCF. First of all, congratulations, RJ Harvey, getting recognition from the Associated Press and the Big 12 Conference, named to the first team All Big 12 and to the third team All American. So that's great accomplishments.
Huge shout out to RJ Harvey,
Yeah,
the GOAT, running back.
Yeah, I think that's just a great tribute to him and his success this season. And I think, oh, hi. Miles is holding my hand now. Just, I think, adds to his legacy there. Just a nice little capper there, getting that national recognition. And with the football news, the return of Mackenzie Milton, as prophesied by Adam last week. That old offensive analyst out of Tennessee, Scott Frost, picked him up, and he's now the QB coach.
So I'm just really glad that all of the microphones and hidden cameras that I installed in the athletic building at UCF is paying off. I'm just going to keep making bold predictions, and they're going to keep coming true. So, our inside sources, the hidden cameras and microphones I installed in the athletic department building at UCF, just paying dividends, honestly.
Yeah, we watched a lot of Mission Impossible to figure out how to do it. We had this huge rig. We lowered Adam down into the through the ceiling, almost dropped him, but he caught him at the last second. It was great.
I don't know why they installed those lasers.
But it's excessive, but it made it more fun.
Yeah, it was just really fun. And USF was doing the same thing, trying to break in, so it was a race against time. It was just so much fun.
It's like those old This Is Sports Center commercials with Ovechkin.
The
Russian spy.
The Russian one.
No Russian, that's something else.
Yeah, the no Russian is something. Let's not go down that path. But yeah, with the goaltender at the time, I forgot his name.
Adam, you asked a hypothetical on our first episode about what if the team, what if the NIL process was around when we had the 2017 run, where we went undefeated and won the national championship. Here's another hypothetical. What if Mackenzie Milton doesn't destroy his leg in 2018?
The sky was the limit with that team. And I think that team played a brand of football that was so fun that it would have been even more contagious than it already was in creating funding for the NIL program if that existed back then. I mean, we look at what's happening in college football now with UNC hiring Bill Belichick. And Miles Turner has some huge thoughts.
Big groan.
Yeah, it's a big groan. He's very unhappy about that Bill Belichick signing. But I can't even imagine what that's doing for their funding down there, with their NIL over down there in Chapel Hill. So you'd have to think that having Mackenzie Milton, if his leg stayed intact, and didn't sit out, which we had Dylan Gabriel came in, played some great football. We've been very blessed during that string to have some really good quarterback play. But you just have to think that we'd still be riding a little bit of that momentum. But I don't know that we'd end up any different of a place than we already were, being in the Big 12 currently.
Sure. That's fair. And, you probably still hire, because, Scott Frost probably still leaves, because the reason he left was to go play for his alma mater, which, you can respect it. He wants to, live out his dream. I get that. So he probably still leaves. You probably still do the Gus hire. Things kind of probably still go the same direction. You probably still end up where you are now.
Yeah, I think ultimately maybe 2018 would have had a little more success, but big picture probably.
Yeah, you would have still ended up with Heupel, and then he would have left for Tennessee, and you'd still end up with Gus Malzahn.
Unfortunately.
The bus. Other coaches filling out the staff here. Sean Beckton is back as wide receiver coach, and then hired Steve Cooper as the offensive coordinator. He's coming from Boise State, but he wasn't with UCF, but he was with Scott Frost in Nebraska for a few years as more of an analyst off the field position or coaching position. So the staff is rounding out some familiar faces. It looks like everybody has either connection to UCF or to Scott Frost. So, like we've said, getting the band back together. So we'll see how that goes.
And I think it's so interesting that they're going this route and this strategy because we've mentioned before on this podcast, the desire to really embrace UCF as a national brand while also keeping it very authentically Orlando. And I feel like it's such a good way to do that by, bringing back players, bringing back coaches that found success here, that kind of built the program to what it is currently. And I think we're seeing it start to slowly pay some dividends. We got a commit from a 4-star defensive back out of Orlando, Brandon Jacob, which is just, we keep talking about building the fence around Orlando of hey, we want to keep the talent here. Play in front of your friends and your family, play at UCF. It's a really good national brand of football. So just, making those connections and kind of reinvigorating the fan base in that way. I think it's going to be really interesting. The Big 12 is difficult. It's a difficult conference to have any kind of consistent success in, but I think UCF is as poised as anyone given its location to kind of take the charge in that.
Some coaches leaving, though, as happens with head coaching changes, the assistants all filter in and out, much like players do. UCF is losing Herb Hand, the offensive line coach. He's heading up to Tallahassee with Gus. And the line obviously is a huge part of the rushing success that the team had this past season. So, going to be an important hire. The game is lost in the trenches, as they say. So you need somebody that can recruit and develop good linemen to make sure that rushing attack can stay potent.
I mean, we're losing Herb Hand, but thankfully we're keeping on to defensive line coach Saltleg. And so
Barry was really good in that movie. Saltleg.
That was basically what it was at the end of that movie.
No.
And speaking of the rushing attack, Cam Martin, the running backs coach, is heading to Tulsa, and that RJ Harvey does not seem happy that that Cam Martin is leaving. If you look at his Twitter, he had a few tweets saying man, what are we doing, losing him? So obviously he was a fan, and I don't know. I mean, RJ Harvey was very successful, and a lot of that should, probably get credit to the coach for developing and teaching. So another sad loss for the team, but I'm sure that there's a good replacement available.
I mean, there has to. I mean, because understandably, it's a good coach, especially if he's a player's coach. You want to keep those kind of guys around. However, if we are confident and we are committed to this new sort of forward look for UCF, you have to be welcome to any change. Because anybody who was here for this past season, like, as much as we love some of these guys, it was not a successful season.
Yeah.
So we should be looking, even though it's kind of sad, we got to look forward.
It's pretty rare that there's a lot of holdovers from previous staffs when there is a head coach change. So it's to be expected. Excuse me. Wow, that was a bad time to burp. Adam, do you have anything to add about that before I move on?
About your burp or about that?
Can you rate it?
Yeah, it was a 6. It was a solid 6 burp. No, but I think that of course RJ Harvey probably had a really special relationship with his running back coach and found a lot of success here under him. So like it makes complete sense that, you know, he's gonna speak out about how great he was. I mean, that just is the nature of the business. As you can hear the pitter patter of footsteps behind me of Miles Turner. Miles Turner's gone. He got on all four and just
scampered out the back door.
Yeah, but that makes complete sense to me that he was kind of defending his running back coach.
Yeah, that's your guy.
That's your guy. You had a lot of success under him. But I mean, RJ Harvey is gone after this year. And, you know, we're going to need a new guy to step in to be that guy for this new crop of running backs. Yeah. So, I mean, no love lost. I mean, it's a business at the end of the day for these coaches and these players. And, you know, sad to see you go. Wish you nothing but success. But on to the next chapter.
Yep. Which looks familiar to old chapters, possibly, you know.
On to the next chapter, which was a chapter from the last book.
But it was a really good chapter.
It was a good chapter.
Yeah, Control C, Control V, success.
Moving on to basketball, the men beat Tulsa in the Cam Martin matchup, and that was their last game before Big 12 play starts at the end of the month. And then haven't talked about the women's basketball yet on the program. They are 7-2 right now.
Hell yeah!
They play High Point tomorrow, Tuesday. So
Miles Turner has a lot of thoughts about High Point University in North Carolina.
So they play High Point Tuesday, which is tomorrow at the time of recording, and then a rough 2-game stretch against number 12 TCU on the 21st and number 14 West Virginia on New Year's Day. So they are diving right into the conference play with 2 big matchups. So big opportunity to make a splash. But best of luck to them. I think that's all I had about UCF today. So we'll hop on over to the pitch with Orlando City updates.
Yeah, so not a lot happening in the world of soccer for Orlando City in the MLS. The season has wrapped up, obviously. Soccer never stops. Premier League's going on right now. We've got some Champions League matches. So if you're a soccer nut like I am, you got a lot to watch. But with Orlando City, a few updates. Duncan McGuire underwent a shoulder surgery. So he was dealing with that issue. I believe Eduardo and I discussed the last playoff match before we got eliminated by the Red Bulls, where that collision happened that resulted in Duncan McGuire going to the ground, Orlando City getting the penalty kick, which ultimately kept them in the playoffs, running to the sideline and having his shoulder put back in place. So there was some damage done to that shoulder, so he needed a surgery to take care of some issues. The team's a little optimistic about him not missing too much time at the start of the year. Obviously, with the impending trip in the end of January to Mexico to start training camp and do some friendly matches down there, there's a good chance he probably won't be participating in some of that. But he's going to work on that shoulder, and we wish him nothing but the best because Orlando City definitely needs some help on the attack, and Duncan McGuire has shown that he can be a lethal threat up top. Eduardo, Danny, Duncan McGuire, possibly missing some time. Does this worry you at all as a fan and supporter of, where's Orlando City going to find these goals?
If I had a nickel every time an Orlando team had a young, promising star that suddenly went out to injury and made what was going to be a really promising season less bright, I'd have 3 nickels, which isn't a lot. But it's weird that it's happened 3 times now.
That's more than it normally happens.
In the same year. It's tough because you are letting go of Facundo Torres, and you want to see what this team is going to look like at the beginning of the year, because obviously Orlando City needs to make some changes. They obviously have a big hole to fill. And Duncan McGuire probably is part of the plan. Excuse me. Goodness, we're all burping. Duncan McGuire is part of the plan to fill that hole. And it's going to be really tough to see for a team, like you said, that already kind of struggles with the attack. We're going to add another person, and then we're going to go back to basically what we were before if Duncan McGuire's not out there, of like a one-person attack, unless they make multiple changes. But the thing is I don't anticipate them making any more than one move. I anticipate them replacing Facundo Torres with a good attacker somewhere from outside of the United States. And then if I was a betting man, I would have said Duncan McGuire was going to be the person that was going to be up next to him. That's just, it makes perfect sense. You sign him to that extension after the weirdness of him going to the UK. You decide, he decides, I want to stay a Lion. I want to be here in Orlando. And you clearly have the need for someone of his skills. And now, we're going to be down for a little bit, and it's tough.
Yeah. And the thing with Orlando is Duncan McGuire was an MLS Super Draft pick, which a lot of soccer fans don't really see the value of the MLS Super Draft. Danny, I'm not sure if you're aware of this. The MLS, so they have a draft, a 2-round draft, just like basketball, where you can pick players coming out of college, or Generation Adidas, which is like a high school player or academy-aged player that signed with Adidas, and they're on certain contracts. You have to pay them a certain minimum. And with the MLS Super Draft and the draft in general, a lot of players, given what soccer is, it's hard to find value in coming out of college. Not saying that there aren't great players that come out of college and that they don't go on to success in MLS. There's just a lot more misses than they are hits. So fans get extremely impatient and don't really see the value of the Super Draft. Orlando, on the other hand, has been very successful drafting players. I don't know what it is about our scouting department. Kyle Larin was a Super Draft pick. Duncan McGuire we got in the Super Draft. We just have this innate ability to find players that can go on and contribute to first team minutes from the Super Draft. We have that coming up here in 3 days, as of 4 days as in time of recording. So a little bit behind the scenes for you, because I know how much you people love behind the scenes. It is December 16th. The MLS Super Draft is December 20th. So I know that I'm going to be following along pretty closely. But Orlando has been linked to some forwards in the Super Draft. We don't pick until about the mid-20s. I think it's 27th. But if there's any team that can find value in the mid-20s, it's Orlando. So I'm not extremely worried. But it's always a crapshoot, for lack of a better term, when it comes to the attack. Because we are losing so many players, and there's so much turnover in roster every year in soccer. Thankfully, some things are staying consistent. The accountant, Kyle Smith, is on for another year. I see Danny chuckle, so I'm going to have to explain. Danny, do you know why Kyle Smith, left back for Orlando City, is called the accountant?
Tell me.
Kyle Smith was an accountant, and his wife encouraged him to go to a USL, which is the second level in the soccer pyramid in America, tryout, and he had to pay so he could try out for this team. And he made the team, got signed to Orlando, and has been a fixture ever since. So we call him the accountant because he was, in fact, an accountant that paid his way and has just performed, which has been fantastic. And it's great to see him back for another year, because we know Facu is going to be gone. Cruz Azul made a late push out of Liga MX, which is the Mexican top flight, to sign him. But it looks like Orlando City and Palmeiras have agreed to terms for $14 million, which makes it the 8th highest outgoing transfer in MLS history. Basically, only 7 players that have been sold by MLS teams have gone for more money. He is tied with Alphonso Davies, who is a U.S. national team regular. So that just kind of shows the quality of player that Facundo Torres is, what he meant to this league. But I think the part that a lot of people aren't reporting on that's, I think, almost more invaluable than anything is the sell-on clause. Danny, being the least soccer knowledgeable of the three of us, I think. Are you familiar with the sell-on clause that happens a lot in soccer?
That's if you accidentally kill a player, then you
You
start to
become
become
the
them.
player.
Yeah,
And if you kill,
there's a movie about that.
and
Yeah,
if you
yeah.
kill enough of them, you trigger an emergency draft.
Right. Yeah. And then eventually you have to get the Mrs. Sell-on clause.
yeah, the Mrs.
So, obviously, I know what we're talking about.
Yeah. So the sell-on clause, essentially, if Facundo Torres performs well for Palmeiras, and they got him for $14 million, and Real Madrid or Barcelona or Atletico Madrid comes calling and says, "Hey, we want that guy. We're willing to pay you $80 million for him."
Mm-hmm.
Orlando City gets a chunk of that too.
Okay.
So we retain a little bit of that right, which is so great. That doesn't always hit, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But when players start talking about going to Europe, where the money just gets exponentially larger, even getting a percentage of that is absolutely massive for this club. So in addition to Facundo Torres being gone, we signed one other player, and I know that we mentioned this last week about the success of Orlando in developing talent. And I mean, that just came to fruition.
Adam, I have a question for you, actually.
Yeah, what's up, Danny?
So that $14 million that presumably is coming to Orlando City, how do you think it would be best spent?
I think Orlando City has a unique opportunity with this $14 million, because not only is Facundo Torres out of Orlando, but one of Orlando's players, Heine Gekling Bruseth out of Norway, who you may not be familiar with, because he never saw the field for Orlando last year. He was a big signing out of Norway. Mm-hmm. He was an under-22 initiative player, which if you remember last week, I mentioned how MLS is incentivizing teams to find young talent by giving them slots to go find these kind of hidden gem players. He was one of those, never saw the field, and San Diego drafted them in their expansion draft. So San Diego will be joining the league next year. And that kind of opens up 2 slots for Orlando. We have an under-22 slot open, and we have a designated player slot open. So with that $14 million, I would love to see Orlando go out, get an attacking piece to kind of fill in for that Facundo role on the wing. And then I would love to see them kind of spend a little bit of money on the back line. I think some of the pieces on the back line are extremely solid. But I would love to add another center back to the mix to pair with Robin Janssen. So however they want to allocate that money to address those 2 needs, I think depth and getting somebody to kind of. I mean, listen, you can't replace Facundo Torres.
Come on.
But you can try and recreate him in the aggregate.
Let's go.
But I seriously think that Orlando needs to find a way to kind of replace some of his production. I think he was so good for Orlando that if they don't go out and get somebody who can create some opportunities for some goals, whether that be them scoring goals or good at crossing the ball in, we're going to see a notable drop off in our offensive production next year. So I think that's going to be extremely important.
What are the so I unfortunately have NBA brain.
Yeah.
And money in NBA brain.
There's a cure for that, I've heard. For the NBA brain.
Oh God.
NBA young brain. I'm done.
14 million in NBA terms is like
nothing. That's like
it's like a solid role player,
yep.
you know?
Yeah.
It is, so I can't conceptualize what 14 million is in MLS terms. Like, is it like, would they spend that for what is a star player that is clearly an all-star star player making on a yearly basis in the MLS?
So for reference, the average salary cap, which you can kind of, Don Garber allows teams that play in cities that are called Miami to kind of get creative with how they do finances. But the salary cap in MLS is just under $5.5 million. Obviously, your designated players don't count against that. So $14 million, you could essentially fill out a roster of 3 MLS teams. So it is a massive deal. So basically your TAM money is roughly $2.7 million. And that's kind of that mid-level exception I talked about, where it's 2.7 mil is your above average player, maybe a fringe all-star. People have TAM player jersey that they wear to the games.
Sure.
So that's going to be about $2 to $3 million. So for $14 million, you're putting about 5 or 6 of those players on your roster.
Got it.
And that's saying that all of the money goes to those players. For reference, the highest paid player in MLS is Lionel Messi, and he makes roughly $20.4 million
a year.
A year. Some of that, though, is from Apple. Apple is subsidizing some of his contract.
What an insane... I understand. I get it. I get that it's messy. I understand. However, that is insane.
Do you want me to chip the iceberg even further a little bit?
Please.
So, do you know who owns Inter Miami?
It's Beckham, right? And he was given the, when he signed on with, was it Galaxy?
The LA Galaxy.
He was told he was going to get a franchise.
Correct. That was part of the thing for getting David Beckham to MLS, was he got a clause that whenever he wanted to, he could say, I want a franchise in this city.
He got a clause that said if he kills the Inter Miami owner, he became the owner of Inter Miami.
Yeah. Papa Shisho. Yeah, so it's just insane that, it's almost funny that this, okay, we have to attract the star player. Let's overpromise him stuff to get him to come to the league. Okay, well, what does he do? He puts a team in Miami where now that they want a star player and we have to overpromise to give him stuff. It's just insane. So, basically, some of the money that every team could get from Apple as part of this media agreement, which is a whole nother problem that I'll save for another episode. Basically, every team is paying Messi's salary, which I know high tide rises all boats, and every game that Messi plays in MLS is sold out and it becomes an attraction. But I think we're beyond that as a league. I think that we have proven that attendance was up before Messi. Attendance will be up when Messi is gone. And it just seems very short-sighted.
If they want to look around at a league that is currently losing viewers year over year, that had an issue with focusing on a handful of stars and only a handful of stars and stopped marketing the rest of the teams in the league and then suddenly doesn't know how to make new stars, look at the NBA, because that's where they're at right now. They are losing viewers year over year. It is confusing how to watch, and they are tired of the same players being shoved down their throats. Where, LeBron is in year 20, Kevin Durant is in year 17, Steph Curry is in year 16. It's the same guys in the same storylines on mostly the same teams that are just talked about over and over and over again. And if MLS wants, somewhere to look at to show you that does not work, that it is a short-term plan but will kill you in the long term, need only look at the NBA.
Yeah, and I think the thing that is going to be most interesting, so if we look at Orlando City's roster last year, I'm going to try and this math is going to be really difficult to do. But basically, Luis Muriel was the highest paid player on Orlando City last year, and he made $2.8 million. So, we're talking about, that was his base. It was 4.3 with incentive structure and things like that. So you're talking about replacing Facundo Torres with 3 Muriel type signings, which could be massive for the club. So I think Orlando has this really unique position to be in currently, where they have the money. We obviously have the owners that are willing to do what it takes to win. So I think it's going to be really interesting. I'm really excited. I've heard a few names that the team has been kind of linked to. That really excite me. I'm not going to go down chasing rabbits on those, because the way soccer works is there's hundreds of thousands of players. If you wanted to chase that rabbit for every player every club is linked to, that's all we would be doing.
Sure.
But some things we don't have to speculate, because Orlando City did make a signing for their first team. It's Colin Guski. He is a 17-year-old out of St. John's, Florida. He kind of came up through the academy, played for Orlando City B, was an all-star in MLS Next Pro, and really kind of encapsulates everything that Orlando City is doing right. They found this kid in St. John's, Florida, just up the way. They brought him into the system. They taught him to play the game the way that we like to play the game here in Orlando, and they're seeing these dividends pay. They signed him to a contract through 2027 with a club option in 2028. So I expect to see him on the field for U.S. Open Cup matches. He's 17 years old. So, it's just going to be, it's absolutely fantastic when you get stories like that, like Benji Michel, local kid coming up through the system, and that can really make an impact with the first team. I think soccer is kind of unique in that, you have kids that are 12, 13, 14 years old right now that are being trained and kind of learning the system that in 3 or 4 years, they really have an opportunity to make the first team. So I think that's a really fun thing.
Yeah, I feel like that's pretty unique, at least in American sports.
Mm-hmm.
You don't see that in any really other league. There's those opportunities, but not nearly siloed within the organizations.
Yeah. Imagine the Orlando Magic going to local middle schools and being we play defensive basketball here in Orlando, so you better learn how to do that now.
Well, you have to think about MLS and what they're doing, and very clearly that is what they should be leaning into. Mm-hmm. They should lean into, if you want to make soccer great in America, for lack of a better phrase, mm-hmm. you need to figure out what American soccer is and then how to market that. You can't just try to bring international stars over and just expect the American audience to just gravitate towards them. Obviously, there are going to be some crossover because you have a lot of people from international markets here. But if you want to truly grab the American audience, one, you need American players.
Yeah.
You need good American players. And you need to have like an American brand of soccer.
I agree completely. And we kind of saw this at first when MLS started with the way that they took penalty kicks. Have either of you ever seen the way MLS took penalty kicks like the first couple years of the league?
No.
So they would start at midfield, and it was a running start. They had the ball. It was like an NHL breakaway. So they had the ball at their feet, them and the goalie, and you had from midfield, you dribbled the ball, and the goalie could leave their box. So you would have goalies rushing at you as you're trying to run with the ball at them to try and score a goal. I mean, it was so uniquely MLS and so uniquely American that it made MLS different.
Sure.
Which I understand now. We're not going to have Messi. We're not going to have these quality players that we have currently doing that. And I understand that you want to make the game more uniform with the way that the game is played around the rest of the world. That makes sense. You're trying to legitimize the league. But there's still some opportunities to have fun. A couple of years ago, at the All-Star game, they brought back Goalie Wars, which is essentially you have two nets, you put them about 10 feet apart from each other, and the goalies are testing how accurate they are throwing the ball for throw-ins, and they're throwing the ball at each other and trying to save it from going into each other's nets.
That's crazy. It sounds awesome.
So much fun. And those are the things that was a thing in early MLS days for like the All-Star game, and they brought it back and fans loved it. It was the best part of the All-Star weekend. And it was all the minor league goalies. It was all MLS Next Pro. So you can do things like that make the sport fun. Especially, I feel like you have a unique opportunity when every other sport is talking about how they're having a difficult time finding out what their all-star game is. I think in MLS, we have this unique opportunity where we can just make the all-star experience just insane. Just do off-the-wall things like that and make it really engaging for fans.
Sure.
Miles Turner is back.
He's all over me.
Listen, that's
crazy.
that Miles Turner defense he's so known for.
Smothering.
But elsewhere in Orlando, the Orlando Solar Bears had a bit of a rough week. They went 1-1-1. They split a home and away series with the Florida Everblades and lost in overtime to the Greenville Swamp Rabbits. That's okay, though, because they have their teddy bear toss game this week on Saturday against the South Carolina Stingrays. And February 1st, they announced Miles Turner is just absolutely everywhere. They announced Food Fest. So Food Fest on February 1st is essentially they're going to have a bunch of food vendors outside of the stadium. And with the purchase of your ticket, you just get to eat food from all of these food vendors. And then you go into the game and watch the Solar Boys play hockey.
Oh, okay, so we're doing that, right?
Yeah, absolutely we are, because for that, it's like $35.
What?
Yeah, $35, and you get, unlimited. I'm sure it's smaller, Sam. I'm sure it's like Epcot food and wine portions of these food.
I know how to get in line.
Yeah, but I could queue up 5 or 6 times for things that I want. And you get a ticket to the game. I mean, that's the thing with these minor league sports, like the Solar Bears. That's just so, it's great because it's affordable. You can take the whole family, and they really go out of their way to make sure that the fan experience is special. And speaking of the fan experience, I reached out to a bunch of Orlando Solar Bears fans in a Facebook group that I'm in, basically just kind of gauging the room, seeing like, how are you all feeling about the season this year? If you could give me one word to sum up the Orlando Solar Bears season so far, how would you describe it?
Hockey.
Yes. There were 4 or 5 people did just say hockey. No, but so some of the answers were messy, inconsistent, Jekyll and Hyde, which is more than one word, but I'll allow it because it is a very accurate answer.
What if you write it all as one word and say it really fast?
Jekyll and Hyde.
Jekyll and Hyde.
Jekyll and Hyde. Dude, which, okay. Mediocre, painful, hopeful. I got a whole sentence, unfortunately disappointing, but I have faith they will come back.
That's a lot of words.
That's way more than one word. Roller coaster, tragic, disappointed. So that kind of, most of these people are season ticket holders. So that kind of gauges kind of where the fan base is currently. It's, they're still hovering around 500. They still have the opportunity to make the Kelly Cup playoffs. So the season's not all lost. But there is a little feeling of helplessness in the Kia Center when the Solar Bears are playing hockey. But hopefully you'll see us at Food Fest. We'll be the 3 guys that are pushing people out of line to get our favorite item for the 5th time.
That's gonna be me. I'm gonna get all kinds of items.
That's
6 items.
Six items.
7 items.
7.
You're gonna need to upgrade your satchel to carry 7 items.
8 items.
8 items.
What about 9 items?
This is getting out of hand.
Yeah. But that about wraps it up for the Orlando Solar Bears. I mean, they have a few games this week, but here's hoping they turn things around here shortly.
It's Magic time.
Kablam.
So the Orlando Magic had a kind of a tough week. Since our last episode, they went 0-2. They had a loss and were booted out of the NBA Cup by the Milwaukee Bucks. And then they had a loss just yesterday to the New York Knicks.
I just want to say the Bucks heard us talking crap about them and have really come on since then. So apologies. I'm so sorry, Milwaukee. Please don't take it out on me.
I'm going to be honest. We lost against the Bucks and the Knicks the last 2 games. However, in a 7-game series against a healthy Magic team, I think Orlando wins both of those series because both of those games that we lost this week were tough, competitive, down-to-the-wire matches without Paolo and Franz. And you add both of those guys in there, in either of those games, we run away. It wouldn't be close. The Bucks game I thought was fine. You saw at the end of the Bucks game, after the Bucks game, the Bucks players had nothing but praise for Orlando. They were Damian Lillard had a lot of really nice things to say about Orlando, about how tough they were playing and how they knew that even though they were down their stars, that they would still compete, which is what they did all the way down to the wire. It took a Dame dagger 3 to even finish that game out. It took him with some heroics to even win that game. Him and Bobby Portis both had really, really nice glowing things to say about Orlando. But do you know what team I'm starting to really, really, really dislike?
Tell me.
The New York Knicks. They were such a fun Cinderella story last year, and they now are so full of themselves. They just... part of it is because it's Cat, and Cat has always kind of been an annoying personality. Big purr. And then I'm going to be honest with you, and maybe this is a hot basketball take. I cannot stand the way Jalen Brunson plays basketball. If you guys have watched him play for any games, you sort of can see he will foul bait he's prime and beat. He reminds me a lot of? He reminds me a lot of Houston Harden.
Yeah.
Of is just looking to get to the foul line any way possible and will badger the ref over and over and over again until he gets his way. Did you know, Danny, that in the Magic's game yesterday against the New York Knicks, 0 starters on the Orlando Magic shot a single free throw? just the 8th time in NBA history that has happened. It was like 13 free throws to the Knicks 30.
That's crazy.
There are a lot of things wrong with the NBA, but we have to stop with the big market bias. Like, we have to, like, the NBA clearly has, like, a refereeing problem. They clearly have always been like this, but they referee players differently depending on their status.
Yeah, the star whistle.
The star whistle. We have to cut it out. Like, if the league wants to be taken seriously, if they want to, they talk about this, like, the league and, like, losing viewers and what are they doing wrong at the base level. People talk about how it's like, oh, they're shooting too many threes. The threes are not the problem. Honestly, watching your team make a bunch of threes is actually really fun. It's really fun when your team shoots a bunch of threes and makes them. It's actually a really fun watch. What's not fun is inconsistencies, feeling like you're getting cheated out of a game, and the league not pushing certain teams because they're not in big markets. Then it becomes this weird self-fulfilling prophecy where it's like, oh, we're not going to push this team because nobody watches them. And it's like, well, nobody watches them because you never push this team. Mm-hmm. And so you kind of end this, like, endless cycle. But yeah, I'm really not fond of the Knicks. Did either of you get to watch either of the games?
I've been not able to watch anything the last week or so.
No.
It's that time of year.
Yeah, I get that. The holidays, yeah.
To be fair, I did go over to Danny's house and smash his TV.
That's
so
true.
That's
why I didn't want to bring it up. Yeah. I'm still a little mad about that.
Yeah, that was for making me almost hit the green lasers that were under me when you were lowering me.
Yeah.
I had the displeasure of watching both games.
Uh-huh.
You kind of hit it on the head with Jalen Brunson and my thoughts, and the frustrating thing to me is I don't think he's a big enough star to be getting the star whistle the way that he does.
Strictly because he's in New York.
If he wasn't in New York, if Jalen Brunson was playing in Charlotte.
Do you know who I feel about this the same way? Austin Reeves. If Austin Reeves played on any other team, he would not get to the line as much as he does, and he would not be nearly the player. Remember those like 10 years where they were trying to tell everybody that Taylor Horton Tucker was going to be the next big thing, and then every trade involved Taylor Horton Tucker,
yeah.
And now he's like big body and playing for who is it? What is he on? Detroit right now? I don't know.
So the Pistons.
And he's like off, like doing God knows what. That's how I feel about Austin Reeves. If Austin Reeves was on any other team, yeah, Jalen Brunson is the Austin Reeves of the East.
Yeah.
You heard it here, folks. Come at me, New York fans.
Yeah, it's crazy. Well, that goes back to Lakers Twitter. You send me your best 2 players. We send you a 2nd-round pick in Taylor Horton Tucker. No, but it really is. It's crazy that almost more so than any sport, hockey has a little bit of it, but almost more than any sport, you can point at moments and say, oh, if this wasn't so-and-so player who played on so-and-so team, they would not get this call.
Yeah.
And that's so frustrating to watch, having grown up in DC, growing up not a Wizards fan, but following the Wizards, and then moving down here and becoming a diehard Magic fan. So smaller market teams, it's so frustrating to watch, knowing that when I go to a Magic Knicks game, I know that I'm watching my team compete against the Knicks and the referees.
Yep.
And I know that as a fan base, we are competing with the Knicks fans in the arena who are also watching their team get every call going their way, and then that hypes them up because they're up 6 because they're shooting 50 free throws a game, and it's just the cycle that's so frustrating to watch, especially for it to be in a game without Franz and without Paolo.
Yeah,
was just, that was probably even more so than the game that we watched together, Eduardo, against the Hornets, was probably the most frustrated I've been.
Mo Wagner has a great game. He goes for a career high 32. We had 2 career highs that night. Career high for Mo Wagner with
TDS,
32,
right?
And Tristan da Silva, career high 18 points, who was looking like a mini Franz Wagner.
Mm-hmm.
We're like collecting German players like Infinity Stones at this point. But what was really frustrating, one, Jalen Suggs. I love Jalen Suggs to death. He is maybe my favorite player on the team. If there's something I love about a player on the Magic, is a player that wants to be here and wants to be in Orlando. Unfortunately, as a Magic fan, I have more than once seen a player get drafted here and then immediately almost have like 1 foot out the door. It happened with Dwight. It happened with Shaq. It happened with Victor Oladipo. It felt that way for many years with Aaron Gordon. It felt like the last few years of him being here, he really did not want to be here. Like it's felt like that with a lot of players, where it's like, why can't we just have the players that want it? Like, how come he don't want me, man? Yeah. Like, why can't we just have the players that want to be here? And Jalen Suggs has been that. Clearly when he plays with 110%. He had an awful game against the Knicks. It was really bad, and he very clearly let his frustrations boil over at the end of that game on that last foul, where he felt like maybe Jalen Brunson fouled him before. Jalen Suggs definitely committed a foul at the very end. That was a correct call. He definitely got the foul. But I don't blame Jalen Suggs for being upset at the way that they were not blowing the whistle at all that entire game. He had 18 shots. He went to the rim plenty of times. He was for sure fouled more than once and did not see the free throw line the entire night. I feel for Jalen Suggs, and I feel like it's unfair at this point to kind of like be upset with him at his production, because at the beginning of the season, they talked about how they wanted to get him to be a little bit more of a playmaker. And that's fine. But then Paolo goes out, and we're like, okay, we don't want you to be a little bit more of a playmaker. You need to be the playmaker because now we've lost our star. You need to be the number 2 on this team. And then Franz goes out, and now we're like, not only do you need to be the number 2 on this team, you now need to be the star. And there goes Adam, who had to leave to go and fix his lights. Apparently they weren't working correctly. Now he's go redo his whole light system. So
I think the Grinch got
the Grinch got to his lights. But Danny, what was really frustrating at the end of that Knicks game was, so we have Jalen Suggs, who's clearly been added more and more to his plate, fouls out, and the Knicks players were acting like they just won the NBA championship. It was like,
that's so annoying.
It was like the meme of like Patrick Beverley when he won that play-in game. Like they were like very clearly like talking and like being up front and like very clearly like, I don't like to use the term front runners very often, but that's what it felt like. It felt like that right up until they were like clearly going to win the game, they weren't like this, and then suddenly when it looked like they were going to win the game, they were all like, macho and like crazy, and they've gotten very annoying. And I would love to see them in a 7-game series. Yeah. I think genuinely with Paolo and with Franz, I understand they blew us out in Madison Square Garden, but that was also with them shooting like they were the Harlem Globetrotters. I think on a regular night when they're not shooting out of their mind, it kind of comes down to earth. I also don't. The Knicks right now, like they're on pace to have the number 2 offense all time. Like that's how good their offense has been, and like I just like philosophically don't believe a team can sustain that for an entire season. If they can, that's great, but you cannot, the kind of shots that teams like that make to kind of sustain that through a season, you have to have something else to fall back on. That's why defense seems to carry for so long, because defense, you can give defensive effort every single night, even if your shot's not falling. Yeah. But if your entire game plan is built around your shot falling and then it isn't, you have nothing to fall back on. Yeah. So I don't believe in that kind of team stylistic. That's why the Celtics are so good, is because they have defense to fall back on. They're a good defensive team, along with also scorching you from 3. It's why it's why that works for them. I don't think it'll work for the Knicks, because it's kind of like the Pacers from last year. The Pacers were this like number 1 offense in the league, high octane, and also maybe second to last in defense. And I just don't believe in teams like that. I think that they will fizzle out eventually. Yeah,
and I think part of it is like team culture too. Like I think the Magic are doing a good job where you have like everybody buying into that defensive, effort. And then like the Knicks last year, I think were just carried by basically the power of friendship, and then
exactly. And then you like break up the power of friendship, and then you like mess. Like if I were a Knicks fan, I'd be kind of upset. Like I thought, like if for me, I know Cat has been playing really well for them offensively. However, I thought they were going to like as soon as they made the Mikal Bridges trade, I thought that's where they should have stopped. I thought they should have kept that identity. I thought they should have kept Dante DiVincenzo. I thought they should have stayed with, even though he hadn't really had, like, I thought the Julius Randle trade should have just been, like, for another complimentary piece. Like, I would have loved to see the real Nova Knicks style, and that's the kind of team that you, like, that you wanted to root for. But I think adding Cat and, changing the team that way, I think that's it. I think the culture changed, and it has made them really insufferable. And also, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, people from New York are also insufferable. And like New York fans just generally about sports are really awful to talk
Bing
to.
bong.
Exactly. They're like, they don't play by the same rules,
Yeah.
And so they can sometimes be a little much to talk to you about sports, and so I'm sure all of that adds to it as well.
Now, going back to talking about Suggs, what Franz's last game, was it the second game against Philly? He had like
Correct.
two, okay, so looking, he had two good games against the Suns and the Bucks. I think it's just he's obviously not going to be producing like Franz did and like Powell would. But it is disappointing to go from 26 and 32 in those two games to 9 against the Knicks. So, you do kind of hope to get more from him than 9 points, but the frustration of how games are called can definitely get into somebody's head.
Yeah. And Jalen Suggs is an emotional player. He plays, it's very clear with the way that he plays. He plays very emotionally, and he has kind of done a really good job in his like later years. The first couple years of the season, he played with emotion 100% of the time, and it seemed to always affect his game. Like if he was hot, he was on fire, he was hyping up the crowd, but if he was bad, he was letting that immediately affect him and kind of bring him down. At the start of the season, he's done a really good job. He had done a really good job of keeping himself a little bit more even keel, but I think unfortunately with more and more pressure being added, more and more things being added to his plate because Paolo is gone, because Franz is gone, I think that is maybe hurt his confidence a little bit and has just kind of added extra stress and pressure that doesn't necessarily need to be there.
Yeah.
And I think that is also contributing to it. I think I saw a lot on Twitter about Magic fans being really upset and wanting to make a trade or saying like, oh, we have to do this. This is what our team needs. And this is what our team needs over here. Unless you're telling me that we need a shooter because we're still the last shooting team in the league, which I agree, I think there is no way to have any possible clue about what this team needs because we've only seen them fully healthy for like 3 games.
Yeah.
So I think for me personally, trades are kind of out of the question. Any sort of like roster tinkering for me is kind of out of the question until we see what this team is like for a good long sample size.
Yeah. How much longer contract wise is this core together?
So Paolo, Franz and Suggs just signed their rookie extensions.
Okay, yeah.
So they're at least another 4 years. Paolo will sign his rookie extension next offseason.
Yeah.
So he'll be another 4 years after that.
We
So
have a good chunk of time coming up still.
And even past that, then they hit restricted free agent. Like you have locked these guys. This core will be locked up for the next like 7 or 8 years.
Yeah.
Like they will be here for a long time. And Paolo is 22. Franz and Jay Suggs are 23. They're not going to hit their primes for another 3 to 4 years.
Yeah, so you give them another year and you see, okay, so these guys are reaching these heights and we need these pieces to come in and complement what we have. So yeah, like no need to panic, everybody.
Well, yeah, and like they're 22 and they're 23, and we're in the 3rd team in the East.
Yeah,
and that is with 2 of them missing a bunch of the like.
Oh yeah,
we're in a great spot.
Yeah,
like,
future is very bright. Present is also
pretty bright. Like,
pretty bright.
It's going to be fun. This next month is going to be challenging because we're like Paolo. His original diagnosis was that he was going to be reevaluated in 4 to 6 weeks. Mm-hmm. We're at about that 6-week mark. He has now like they've got videos of him like shooting again, and he's like starting to like ramp up. And as far as like conditioning is concerned, but it feels like he probably won't be making it back until at least like the end of December, maybe the beginning of January, which is okay. I think if you are looking at the long term outlook of this team, you do not want Paolo Banchero back or Franz Wagner back until they're absolutely ready.
Yeah.
The last thing you want to do is re-aggravate that kind of injury and then lose an entire season.
Yeah.
Like, as much as it pains me to say it, the playoffs this season, and we will make the playoffs. That's not the problem. Like, home court in the playoffs would be really, really, really cool, but it is not going to, like, And it's not like a deal breaker for us. It's not going to end our season to not have home court. Like, we'll make the playoffs this year, and we will still be able to play Magic basketball in the postseason and be better for it. Even though the season hasn't gone necessarily the way that we expected it as far as injuries are concerned, like, there's going to be another season next year, and that's probably the season where you're going to start to see Orlando make probably a more, like, I would imagine if they're going to make like a consolidation trade, which people have been talking about a consolidation trade for Orlando for a long time, I would imagine it happens this offseason. I don't think anything happens this season. I think this offseason is where they go, all right, who are the guys that are going to be here? Because this time without Paolo and Franz is a really good time to evaluate. Is to say, hey, who's going to step up? Who are going to be the guys that are going to be here long term, and who are going to be the guys that kind of can't like fit into what we need? And so I'm sure at the end of this year in the offseason, that's where they're going to be like, hey, you're the ones that are going to stay, and then the rest of you, we're going to find new places for you, and we're going to bring in people that kind of fit what we're trying to do here. And for fans of the show, the Central Florida Sportscast will actually be in attendance for the game this Thursday against OKC. We had gotten these tickets months ago, part of the six-man show's group night. And unfortunately, there's going to be no Paolo and Franz, most likely no Paolo. And it's against OKC, and it's on TNT. And it's probably going to be an ugly game. We can be pretty honest with ourselves at this point. You know, OKC is playing really good basketball. Besides the Chet Holmgren injury, they have had really good luck health-wise. They haven't, like, their stars have not had to miss any, significant amount of time. And even if they do, they're kind of like Orlando, where, like, they're a really deep team, so even if a guy goes down, they seem to always have somebody else to kind of pick up the slack. So I imagine it is not going to be the prettiest game in the world. However, if you will be attending that game, we're going to be there. If you want to hang out with us or chat with us, let us know. We're going to be there. We're going to be hanging out. So please come and say what's up.
Be a fun time. Just need food trucks outside.
I know.
Now I'm like kind of disappointed every time I go to a sporting event. There's not going to be a food fest.
I agree.
It should just be like a thing that sports teams do.
I agree.
Every day is a food fest. All right, here we go. The long anticipated surprise. I have a game for, just Eduardo right now.
Let's go.
Eduardo, are you familiar with Kevin Bacon and the 6 degrees of separation?
I'm familiar with Kevin Bacon.
Okay, so there's this thing that they say that you can pick any actor or actress, and you can find within 6 connections, like being in the same movies, you can get to Kevin Bacon.
Yeah.
So we're going to do the 6 degrees of Dwayne Bacon.
Holy hell, this is incredible.
So I have... I found a website from Gino Reyes. Thank you for your wonderful website. You called it the 6 degrees of Kevin Durant, which is also a good twist on the name. Dwayne Bacon, I think, fits better for our purposes. Now, unfortunately, it looks like this hasn't been updated in the last few seasons. I think this was made in 2021. Okay. So any players that have come in after that, they don't look not in the database. So luckily, the 2 guys I have for you that I want you to connect are, we're going to go Dwayne Bacon, of course.
Yep.
And I want you to get to the Orlando Magic's first ever draft pick, Nick Anderson. And this website, it's going to have the shortest connection, and it will jump, it won't all be Magic players that overlap. It'll hop around to different teams. So I also have Basketball Reference ready. So if you throw out a team name, I can, or like a team year or whatever, I can see who's on the roster and kind of guide you. But let me just.
So does it have to be players?
Yes. Okay. Yes. Let me just redo it. It did clear out my prior search here. Okay. So this has it. There is one. Okay. No, sorry. It's 3. It goes Nick Anderson to another player to Dwayne Bacon. So you can make this jump in 2 players. That I'll be very impressed if you do get this. But like I said, there's so many ways to do it.
I think with Nick Anderson, I think the easiest way to do it because I'm going to start the Nick Anderson side because I think it makes more sense to start with the older player side.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go Nick Anderson to Shaquille O'Neal because Shaquille O'Neal has played on lots of teams.
Yes,
he has played with a lot of people.
He is a key player in this like web.
Absolutely. Now, here's the thing: is like, do I go and try to find someone who has played with Dwayne Bacon, or do I go to the next key? Like another player that has played in a very large amount of seasons that I don't believe ever played with Dwayne Bacon. However, has played with so many people that I have to get someone who has played with Dwayne. Like I think I can get there in 4. However, I'm trying to figure out the way to get there in 3. And I think it is a Nick Anderson, Shaquille O'Neal, third player, Dwayne Bacon. I think that is the key. However, I'm going to go with my original gut before you had told me, I had already started formulating in my head. I'm going to go Nick Anderson, Shaquille O'Neal, LeBron James. And now LeBron James has played with tons and tons and tons of people in the league. However, Dwayne Bacon, let's see here, the year he was on the Magic, who else was on the Magic? And have any of them played with LeBron James? Goodness gracious.
Let's see. I'm pulling up that year's roster. I will say that the connection on the website is from the Hornets, not the Magic. Not to say that it's not possible, but...
So it was a player that played with Shaquille O'Neal that then played on the Hornets.
Well, okay. The original like connection that I have. So nothing to do with Shaq. So this is you're going on a different path.
Got it. I understand. Yep. But it was a Hornets player that then played with Dwayne Bacon. Because Dwayne Bacon played for the Hornets.
He was 3 seasons with the Hornets, 1 with the Magic.
Yeah, he was in the Hornets with because he was at the same assistant coach that was there. His name was Steve Clifford, and then Steve Clifford came over and became the head coach of the Orlando Magic. Brought Dwayne Bacon over to score a bunch of points and lose us a bunch of games.
Yeah, the Shreddin. Wait, what was his nickname? The Pancetta Shredder.
The Pancetta Shredder. That's insane. Let's see here. So we've got Shaq. We've got LeBron. And LeBron played with... Who would have been on that Charlotte Hornets team with Dwayne Bacon? Or even that Magic team with... I'm trying to remember the Magic team with Dwayne Bacon, because it was still... It was just after... It was the year that we traded everybody away, right? And it was the year that we had traded away Vooch and Fournier. And... Man. Was that year where we had gotten Ish Smith for a second? Would Ish Smith have been a Hornet... Because we had done a trade for Ish Smith, and Ish Smith, I think, played for the Hornets with Dwayne Bacon. Is Ish Smith the answer?
Let me see. Ish Smith. You're talking about the Hornets, right?
Yeah.
Hang on, I'm on the Magic roster right now. Sorry, I need like 10 screens to do this more efficiently, and an actual mouse instead of a trackpad, but that's fine.
Yeah, but did Ish Smith play with LeBron?
I don't know. I did find there is a player on that Magic team that played with LeBron.
Damn.
At least one.
Okay.
It does not look like Ish Smith would have played with LeBron.
Was it Shelvin Mack? Shelvin Mack didn't play with LeBron, did he?
I don't think so.
Oh, man.
Let me know if you want any hints.
Yeah, let me get one hint, because I am...
He is currently this player that has played with LeBron and Dwayne Bacon. He is currently with the Los Angeles Clippers.
A Clippers player that has played with LeBron and has played with Dwayne Bacon. And he's currently active?
Yes.
Okay.
His last 5 games, he's not a big minutes guy. But he is seeing the floor.
It's not the Morris twins. Who else is on the Clippers? Man, we played the Clippers not too long ago, and all I remember was James Harden and Norman. Like, Norman Powell didn't play, and it felt like everybody else on that team was just like having the game of their life. I can't remember who is even on the Clippers right now. James Harden, Norman Powell. Who else plays on that team? Man.
It's more of a, he's a big guy.
It's a big guy. It's not Kyle O'Quinn, who was another Magic senator. Is it Mo Bamba?
It is.
Ah!
Mo Bamba. So you went Nick Anderson, Shaq, LeBron, Mo Bamba,
Dwayne Bacon.
There you go. The shortest path, Nick Anderson to Steve Kerr, the 92-93 Magic, who Steve Kerr played with Tony Parker in 2002-2003, who
was on that Hornets team for just the season. Oh my God.
I was surprised it was so quick.
That's insane. This is an incredible game. This was incredibly well done. I really enjoyed this.
Yeah, that's fun. We could do more at another time. I don't want to. I mean, unless you want to come up with two guys, like I said, we can.
I would love to see. I can try to do like a, but I don't. Yeah, let's see here. Let me see if I can think of two guys that I could think of a path for that could probably get you there. Or let's just do somebody fun. So let's say I'm gonna make it easy for you. So we'll start with somebody easy. So we'll start with, let's say, Kevin Durant.
Okay.
And then we will say Kevin Garnett.
Okay. Do you want me to generate the path here?
Oh, I thought you were going to be doing this.
Yeah,
no,
okay.
This is me doing it for you. Yeah.
Okay, so KD has played for a while and for a few teams. Oh gosh. See, this is going to be tricky for me because I have a hard time remembering when people are on what teams.
Sure.
All right, let's see. So Garnett, obviously, I'm going to know from the Celtics mostly. Obviously, he was with Timberwolves before that, and then ended up back with them and played for the Nets at some point. Ooh, I wonder if there's any overlapping players there before KD got there. I don't know. I'm not going to remember the Nets roster in between there. All right, let's think. So Kevin Durant played with... Gosh. And then you start thinking like, oh, Russell Westbrook has been a lot of places now. Harden's kind of been around.
Well, and like Durant has played with a lot of people.
Yeah.
Kevin Garnett had kind of stayed with the same cast while he was around.
Yeah.
But Kevin Durant has played with a large cast of people.
Yeah, so you have those like nexus points there. Yeah, I was looking into like finding a website ideally that would do this because I didn't want to try and map out every single possible path. And there's a lot, people were saying like there's certain players that just, if you played a long time and ended up on a lot of teams, you're going to be in a lot of short paths just because of so much overlap. Okay. Let's see where I haven't even come up with one leap yet. Let's say, okay, so Kevin Durant was with Kyrie Irving in Brooklyn. And I mean, here I can easily go down a path here with Boston. So KD, Kyrie, in Boston played with let's see. Oh, okay, Marcus Smart, who then played, I'm pretty sure he overlapped with Rondo, who would have played with KG. Yeah, I don't think that they traded Rondo. Oops.
Yep.
There we go.
Marcus Smart and Rondo both played at the same time.
There you go.
And he was traded in the year after. So,
Okay.
he was traded in 2014, but he did, let me see, did they actually play together? So when was Rondo traded? So he was traded in 2014. So let's see here. When was Rondo traded? January 3rd. Oh, no, that is the wrong one.
I think it was a mid-season trade to Dallas.
Boston, December 2014. So he must have played with...
There you go.
Now, I will say it was one step. It was It was Kevin Durant played with Ronald Dupree.
Oh,
and then
how did I forget Ronald Dupree?
He played with him. Kevin Durant played with Ronald Dupree on the Seattle SuperSonics, and then later or before that, Ronald Dupree had played on the Minnesota Timberwolves with Kevin Garnett.
There you go. There it is.
Damn, Adam would have loved this one. Pour one out for Adam.
Well, next time we'll bring this one back. I don't know. I've started to try and think of some fun things we can do, some games and stuff.
This was great. I think this is perfect.
Cool.
All right. Well, I think that's going to do it for this episode of the Central Florida Sportscast.
Yeah. Stay tuned next week. Probably won't have a normal episode, but look forward to, hopefully, assuming we can make everything work, we will have some live at the time thoughts from the game we're going to. So with Christmas coming up, we'll be all of us will be busy with holiday plans. So we'll try and put something out for you next week. But until then, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.